Biggest news, I think, of the year, at least in terms of Bitcoin miners and public Bitcoin mining markets. And that's the CoreWeave Corsi acquisition deal. So this news hit this week, at the beginning of the week, hot, right out of the gate on Monday. And this is something that we knew was going to happen, or at least we knew rumblings about it. The Wall Street Journal had a scoop a while back that it was leaked to them that these talks were ongoing. And now we have some details for the deal. So it's going to be an all-stock deal. It's valued at approximately $9 billion. The transaction, I'm quoting from our piece here on Blockspace, based on a fixed exchange ratio of 0.1235 CoreWeave shares for Core Scientific shares, represents a 66% premium to Core Scientific's pre-announced share price, and is expected to close in Q4 2025. So that's about, for every share of Core Scientific shareholders get an eighth of CoreWeave shares. Now, this prices it at roughly $20.40 per share at the time of the announcement. Now, Core Scientific took a huge hit following this. So I think Core Scientific shareholders were a little bit disappointed about the terms. CoreWeave did not really react much. It maybe fell a few percentage points, but nothing really outside of the, I think, range of normal volatility for a stock like that. And just to go over a few other details from the news, the buyout would entitle CoreWeave to 1.3 gigawatts of power capacity. Roughly 850 megawatts of those are slated for HPC and AI. Only 590 of those are the ones that Core Scientific and CoreWeave had in their original agreement or their expanded agreements, because they had multiple ones that they signed over the year. And there is an additional on top of that 590 for a total of 850 potential for AI and HPC. But there's 500 megawatts of Bitcoin mining capacity that's, you can't really imagine CoreWeave doing much with, except for maybe selling off to the highest bidder. So that's the highlight of the news. I want to throw it over to y'all for any second takes or thoughts on this.
I'm going to grab it. If you're watching on YouTube, CoinDesk TV, elsewhere, you can see the Core's chart that I threw up on the screen. We're trading about 1327 as of this morning, which is not fantastic, where we started the week at $18. Of course, there was a price premium that arose when people were looking at the predictions. There was a few quotes out there as high as $30+ for the trade price there, but ended up being about $20. And then as we're actually going to put out a piece in a little bit talking about this, the price went down quite a bit after this announcement for $20 because there's an arbitrage here. Basically, what you're doing when you buy Core Scientific now is you're buying cheaper exposure to CoreWeave, and not exactly what people want right now. Bitcoin's ripping towards all-time high, and the AI trade, I think, is very contingent on tariffs and the questions around importation and usage of new GPUs. So Core Scientific has really tied itself at the hip over the next few months as this transaction closes. It's expected to close in Q4. It's tied itself to the hip to the AI game, and specifically CoreWeave. And I think that's made a lot of investors unhappy. At the same time, we could pull other charts up. We've had really strong gains for Bitcoin mining stocks this week because they trade as a beta play to Bitcoin. Core Scientific has not experienced that this week. So we've had a bunch of disgruntled shareholders post that. And I just want to open up the question to the floor. Do you think this was a good deal for shareholders? Do you think that this made sense? I can see arguments both sides. I think the people I've talked to so far have been more on the negative side. Any takers for this story?
I think if you look at it just on the face value of the deal, you read all the details, you may have a bit of a negative perception of the deal, and I get that. But for me, we follow this industry very closely on this podcast. I read about this as just a massive success for Core Scientific. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember when they were going through bankruptcy restructuring, people thought it was the end of Core Scientific. People didn't think that they were actually going to come out of that. This is a deep bear market. But here they are, not 5 years later, getting acquired for $9 billion, having also rejected an offer from CoreWeave last year at, you said what, this was $20 a share, right? Buyout. Back then, I think it was between $5 and $6 a share, right? So this is 1 year later and 4 times, the per share, and I'm sure their share count's gone up. So I don't know what the you guys may have the number on that, the actual valuation from last year. But you think about that, they were really the first ones to, I feel like, just plunge fully in the deep end on AI conversion, and everyone's kind of followed suit. It paid out big time for them. They have 200 to 500 employees, $9 billion valuation. Like, that's, I would commend the team for getting them out of bankruptcy, knowing their worth, rejecting the offer, and then getting to this point. I know some stockholders out there may feel like they could have held out for better, but I can't blame them for taking this deal at all. I don't know what you guys think. Maybe that's
I'll add one thing. So it's a $1 billion offer in 2024, and they've worked into a $9 billion offer a year later. So by any regard, that is a really nice number to see. The thing that I've noticed mostly that people are getting frustrated about is that there wasn't any price protection if CoreWeave went down, right? So this is trading again based on CoreWeave. You're basically in a derivative or price exposure to CoreWeave as a Core Scientific bag holder. And if CoreWeave goes down while the transaction is happening, like, it just hurts more for Core Sci holders, especially right now. Like, max pain is Bitcoin rips, the AI trade goes down, and Core Sci bag holders are stuck, like, tethered to the hip to CoreWeave. And so far, that's kind of what's been happening over the last week. Now, this is going to take months for this to occur. One other angle, not to hog the podium here, is like, what if there's another buyout offer from another neo cloud that comes in during this time period that's better than the $9 billion? Could that be engaged with? You have to look at the finer details of the engagement between CoreWeave and Core Scientific, which I do believe are public. But I would be interested to think about that, because Core Scientific obviously has some really nice assets that were worth paying $9 billion for.
I could jump in here, Colin, but I take the long-term view on this as well. I know, in the short-term, markets can get pretty in the details, which is what they need to do. But long-term, the story here to me is the turnaround the last 2 to 3 years, and just kudos to the management team over there. And then as well, a continuation of the move of Bitcoin miners into other parts of computing, right? I think it's proving out the thesis that data center operators are, commodity producers of the 21st, 22nd century. Really, what they're doing is they're chasing the highest dollar per megawatt, and right now that's in the AI HPC space. And I think over time you'll see lots of data centers kind of just chasing that higher dollar per megawatt, and then bringing those risk adjusted numbers closer together. Because over a long period of time, we shouldn't expect huge differentials in different type of computing, because you'd expect data center operators to move their operations into that type of computing. So I think you're seeing that bear out in real life.
I think that about does it for that. There's nothing else really for me to add, other than maybe one thing about whether or not Core Scientific could find another buyer for these sites. I think the fact that they're taking an all-stock deal and they're kind of trying to rush to get a deal done indicates that they probably are not really bullish on the prospect of that, right? Because there's this kind of strange middle that CoreWeave is in, where they're not a traditional hyperscaler. They're a neo cloud company. They are scrappier. They are more nimble. And they're also not mired in all of the kind of bureaucracy that comes with being a multi-trillion-dollar company like a Microsoft, right? So I don't think that Core Scientific would ever be an acquisition target for those companies. But for CoreWeave, they're just big enough and they're just serious enough to where it will make sense.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the episodes we put out. Also, check us out on Spotify, Apple, and elsewhere.